Hi everyone, Brindley Little here from your land partner, coming to you today for your next instalment of 100 in 100. I believe this is instalment number 19, so we've still got a fair way to go to keep adding value to you, to improve your business, help start and scale businesses through this period of time. We just entered the appraisal mini series within 100 in 100. So up to this point, we've been through the sort of business side of things and the setup, and we've been through sourcing. We're now moving swiftly on to appraisals, which is the most important part of the development process throughout the entire life cycle. So it's an important area to cover. We're going to cover as much detail over the coming days in the mini series. Richard kicked things off yesterday with an introduction to appraisals, and the fact that appraising a deal is more of an art than it is a science. It's not just down to the numbers. Now, numbers are heavily important. This particular broadcast is entitled Go for No. And it's our approach to the appraisal process and putting in a traffic light system with decision points at each stage during the appraisal process that are designed to identify and filter out the no's as opposed to the yeses. It's a bit like a salesman, that's got to hit a certain number of sales targets. Let's just say that's 1 in 20, then he knows that he's got to, more often than not, go through 19 no's to get 1 yes. So for us, it's the same kind of methodology. We are effectively setting up our barriers and our filtering system in place to find the no's, because what ideally you want to do is to spend as little resource as possible on finding the reason to walk away from that project and move on to the next one in your pipeline. We've talked a lot about pipelines in terms of ensuring that you have a sufficient pipeline that you don't get drawn into any particular project. And that can become very difficult, certainly when you start you've got emotions involved. You might not have a situation where you've got many deals in or opportunities in your pipeline. You might be dealing with a particular land owner, family business or what have you that you get on very well with and you like and you really want to help them. You can also come across opportunities that you just really like the deal, really like the building, really want to do something with. And before you know it, you are, over invested into trying to make a deal work. So the appraisal process is designed as such to kind of remove emotion and look more at it from a logical perspective. So we want to hit certain decision points throughout each stage, and generally the appraisal process is divided into about 4 stages. So first of all, I guess the appraisal really does actually start from incoming inquiries, because we are collating information, we're researching, we are, as we're collating that information through conversations, through meetings with owners, we are computing that information, and then we are making decisions, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, on whether we feel it is a good opportunity to move forward with. And ultimately, what makes a good deal isn't just based on the numbers, it's based on the feel of the deal as well, how well you get on with the owners, whether you feel you can work with them. So it really is a balancing act between all the elements involved, really. But moving on to the formal appraisal process, we start things off with the high level numbers. We always iterate our processes and change them and try and improve them as much as possible. We did go through a stage where we would perhaps do an initial assessment first before doing high level numbers. But what we found by doing that was that you do quite a lot of work on the initial assessment, of which we'll go through in subsequent videos. And it might be a few hours of work or a few hours of your team's work, but you collate all this information, you prepare it to speak to an owner next time. You then go on to high level numbers, and then you realize that you're poles apart in terms of expectation versus kind of reality, really. So what we've actually done over recent years is swap the processes around. We start with high level numbers, just to find out the kind of ballpark, really. So each time we go through the filtering process, we start with a sort of something there, then we filter it slowly, 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 until we've got something that we can move forward with. So we cast the net wide to catch as many deals as possible. So we do very, very little work in terms of the specific information that might derail a project, until we've got an expectation and ballpark figures to talk through to understand whether it's worth spending any time on. So that's the first go for no decision point, really. High level numbers. Are we in the realms of possibility? If we are, yes, but if we're not, then we haven't spent a massive amount of time or resource in finding that no. We then move that forward into the initial assessment. We go through the 7 or 8 steps in the initial assessment to identify any showstoppers, whether it's a traffic light system that you work to, which is something that we do. So any sort of ambers, they're worth, that they potentially could derail the project. They potentially could be a no, but at this stage, we're prepared to move forward with them. Greens, we don't really focus too much attention on. It's the reds that you want to find out. And we'll give you some good examples of those in subsequent videos as we go through the IA process in detail. Moving that through, so that's the next go for no point. Essentially, there's 8 points within the IA, so there's 8 go for no decision points there. We then move on to planning assessments, and we look at things like planning constraints, planning policies, and planning potential. So there's a number of go for no decision points during that period as well. And this is perhaps where you start having to invest a bit more money with consultants, with experts, with people that have got experience in the planning, the planning sphere. So as we go further down the process, the cost of getting to that no grows. So we then move that forward into full development appraisal. This is where we are spending a lot of time, a lot of money often, and a lot of resource in refining whether the deal is right to move forward with. And ultimately, the best investment you can make is ensuring that you're going to move forward with the right project, whether that's spending £50 or whether that's spending 50,000 in some cases and walking away from 50,000. Nobody wants to walk away from any money, really, but it's a case of putting these processes in place so it enables you to make a logical decision on whether it's wise to move forward or not. The worst investment you can make is moving forward with the wrong project. So it's a question really for you guys is how much are you prepared to invest to get to that no? In kind of sales and you have and social media and marketing and things like that, you often hear people talk about cost of acquisition. So let's say you're running an event, for example, and you want to fill 50 seats. You work that back and you might put some Facebook advertising out there that might cost a certain amount. You might put some other marketing out there that might cost a certain amount. And you end up coming up with a metric that is a cost per person in the room. So it might cost £100 to get that one person in the room, and then you can work out your profitable metrics from there. And it's the same with go for no. So we are looking to kind of ascertain £1 per no and time per no. So let's just say that we are looking at 20 projects, and each cost and time per no on each project vary, obviously. We might find project number 1, opportunity number 1, we might get to the no very, very quickly because we do our high level numbers. We end up at £600,000 as a ballpark valuation. They're at 2 million. We're way, way apart. We say, well, we're not even in the realms of possibility of kind of meeting somewhere close, or reworking the deal structure so it works for everybody, or lowering their expectations sufficiently enough that we can do a deal. So we got to the no fairly quickly. We haven't spent too much time on it, and we haven't spent too much money on it at that stage. So the cost per no in that instance is relatively low. It could be £20, it could be £50, £100, something in and around that kind of figure. We could get to, I don't know, opportunity number 12 or 13, by which point, we've been through similar process for the previous ones, but we may have taken a few a bit further forward. We may have taken some into the initial assessment. We may have taken some into the planning assessment. Let's say we take number 13 into the planning assessment. We have to get a planning consultant to take a look at the opportunity. The deal might be under exclusivity. We get a planning consultant to look at it, and we're working with them. You're likely to be paying them by the hour, whatever their rate is. They might spend a couple of hours looking at planning policy, collating a report. You then go and discuss it with the landowner, and it doesn't materialize because something either in planning policy or something that your team tells you that actually is not going to be possible, or what you first thought out might be possible on the site isn't, and that's massively lowers the GDV and lowers the land value. So essentially the expectation versus achievable value, again, is too far apart for you to actually do a deal. And at that stage, you've perhaps spent £500 to get to a no. So let's say on average, over 20 projects, you spend a couple of £100 per no that you're trying to get to. So over 20 projects, 20 times £200, £4,000. So effectively, each yes, therefore forward, say you're doing a deal every 20, so 1 in 20 deal to opportunity ratio, you're getting a suitable opportunity, then each yes will cost you a minimum of £4,000, if you understand where I'm going with this. So when you look at starting out, for example, and look at how much money is required to get into the industry, it's not just about the money that it's going to cost to buy a piece of land and take it through planning. It's those kind of appraisal costs that get missed, and this is where a lot of people just skip over the appraisal. They do high level numbers, they potentially get motivated to buy a particular project, they move their numbers around to make deals work, and then they end up getting involved in the wrong projects and trying to move through the gears too quickly. So the go for no process and the filtered, structured appraisal system that we have in place enables you to put logic to those decisions. You can have that cost per no in the back of your mind to have an idea of how much it's going to cost you, and also have an idea in terms of how much it's going to cost you to get off the ground effectively. How many deals do you want to do? I want to do 1 or 2 or 3. Then you're going to have to filter through 50, 60, 100, 200 deals. What that cost is to get to that no per deal, because there's far more no's than there are yeses, and then that will give you a good idea in terms of how much you've got to invest to find a deal that you can move forward with and realise its value. On top of the cost, as well as the kind of structured process, the other thing that there isn't really a science to it is what we call a vendor appraisal. So you could go through high level numbers, you could be fairly close potentially, you could go through initial assessment and it all checks out against the 8-point checklist. You go through a planning assessment, everything's great there. You start looking at a full development appraisal in a lot more detail, but something tells you through your conversations and your intuition when dealing with vendors that this isn't going to come off. What you don't want to do is then instruct the legal team, push it down the road where you're spending £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 on legal agreements for them to pull out if you've got a feeling in the back of your mind that you just don't think this is going to work, or you don't feel that you'll be able to work with those particular owners or partners. So there's no science to that bit, but it's more of an intuitive feeling that you get, and that will happen. There's various checkpoints there throughout the process that you might just get a feeling after the first call, or you might get a certain feeling after a few meetings where you go, yeah, it's a good deal. The numbers kind of work, but I'm not so sure we'd be able to work with these with this landowner. In which case, you make a decision to walk away, and you effectively get to a no yourself. Hopefully that's helped. So just remember, how much are you prepared to invest to get to that no, and go for as many no's as you possibly can, because by default, by finding as many no's as possible, it brings you closer to a yes and a successful deal to move forward with. So I've been Brindley Little from your land partner for your instalment of 100 in 100 in our appraisal series, and we'll see you again for the next one. Take care.